Okay, the time is 6:31, and I call this specially called meeting and budget workshop number 2 of the Red Oak City Council to order. Let it be known that and Councilman Drake might be calling in later on, but he is absent at this point. Notice has been duly posted in accordance to the Texas Government Code Section 551, and we are conducting this meeting both in person and online. Mr. Fuller.
Okay. So, they're figuring out one thing, but I'll start going through the rest of it. So on this top sheet you have in this packet.
Yeah, well, I guess actually, should we do the regular business, or do we have any citizen comments on that first?
No, you don't have citizen comments.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, and do you want to do the regular business first?
You can.
Okay. So consider and possible action regarding the scheduled date. Do we need to defer that based on this night's discussion till afterwards?
No, I think the date is
Still set? Okay. Consider action on regarding the scheduled date of August 9th for a public hearing on the proposed annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022. And we actually have a specific motion that we need to read. Ms. Platt, do you want to give us the background over there more specifically?
So this is to basically schedule the budget hearing. We had our strategic planning workshop on the 7th, and then go the proposed budget on the 23rd. But this schedule the budget hearing, which of course will update that proposed budget based on council's direction tonight. And so we just plan that scheduled budget hearing for August 9th, and then direct publication.
Okay. So in front of you, that's the motion that we need to have read. So I'll entertain read that motion. And somebody would use that.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we set the date of the public hearing on the proposed budget for August 9th, 2021, and publish notice of budget hearing in the newspaper at least 2 days prior to the date of the public.
So do we have a time for that? Do we need to put a time?
And it will be at the regular scheduled time.
Okay. So that's our regular meeting.
Regular.
Okay. Okay. Motion was made by Councilman Brawley, seconded by Councilman Wilson. Those in favor, and I think we need a roll call. Okay. We'll have a roll call, please.
Franklin, aye.
Bover, aye.
Wilson? Aye.
Raleigh, aye.
All right, that passes 4-0. Thank you, gentlemen, and Ms. Platt. Now, I apologize, Mr. Fuller.
Okay, so on that top sheet that you have is basically the changes that we made based on the comments and changes in, revenues from the budget and so forth since the last meeting. So I'll just go through them. On the general fund, we went ahead and did the tax notes, on the capital side for 1.2, and that allows us to do an interfund loan to the water sewer fund for the 1.4 million on the TxDOT reimbursable infrastructure.
At 935 on the Little Road.
We did find out that we cannot use the American Recovery Funds Act for that particular project because it's being reimbursed by federal funds instead of state. So, but we get reimbursed for it. We were able to use 1.365 million on the American Recovery Plan for projects. We'll go through that on the supplemental sheets, but it's almost everything else on the water sewer side, for a lot of those capital outlets. We added, when we had the expense, the loan, we also have the reimbursement from TxDOT. We added back in the Doug Lane construction reimbursable, or American Recovery Act. We did go ahead and increase the water sewer impact study because it was splitting years, so we pushed it all into this coming year instead of splitting, because that allows us to get a savings overall. So by doing the water sewer and the street impact fee studies, we're able to save money doing them both together, but we had to do it all in one budget. We can take that out of the impact fee fund. So we have the $600,000 in the impact fee fund. We can utilize that stuff. Increase from tourism just a little bit. Property tax collections actually went up. The appraisal district finally got their final calculations, and the tax collector worked with Gloria. We got the actual tax rate, the very same tax rate itself, below the de minimis, and there's where we are on that. We could go up to the voter approval rate, but we don't have to. We're actually good where we're at. We still have 324,000, I think, still good. We're looking at having some padding there, so I wouldn't want to go spend all that. I'm going to put as much of that back in the reserve as possible, just so that we know, we did get a little more aggressive on sales tax and so forth, so I want to be able to have that, waiting there for us if needed. And back here again, the fire district numbers came in, an extra 104,000 from them. Operating transfers in, 6,700. We added in, so what we have right now, correct me if I'm wrong, what we have right now on police fire is doing both the normal stuff that they always get, but adding 3% to the entire step limit. I think they have it timed all in April, is that right? So in April, they would take their step, but their step would in essence be a 6% increase instead of the normal 3%, because we're adjusting for the market as well. What I want to try to do, though, is I want to try to do the step plan adjustment in October, because that's where we need to be trying to get people hired. We're going to need that starting salary increase, try to bring people in. So we would go ahead, and that's not in here, so we'll talk about the cost for that. But that would allow us to take advantage of that, so that existing employees would get that 3% impact to their current salary. But more importantly, the new hires would get that 3% increase on the starting salary. Then in April, you would still take the step and get the other 3%. In some cases, it's 4 or 5%. And then we also have the 3% market adjustment in October, wanting to do it in October for the regular employees, not on step plans, and then the 3% merit increase in April. Gloria, do you know, have that sheet show what that cost is moving the? Yeah, we just want to move the market adjustment to.
So it's basically, just basically same number again, because it's in half for April. So it's down at the bottom, as part of this note scenario, changed it to October, down there.
So it'll be $111,000 to move that into October for a market adjustment, and then the second hit as well. We did go ahead and put in at least half a year for minimum and administrative assistant in parks. We had a little increase to the communications needs budget, $24,000. We added to the mowing contract, $10,000. And then you're going to have to explain the 97, because that's where I'm at.
Right, and that's actually, I was checking into that now, because we had a little bit of a delayed hiring when we brought this to previous workshop, and so that was the difference then and now. So I was looking into that, so I want to come back to that in a little while. Just trying to get with us, trusting the meeting.
So what I'm trying to do is, obviously we'll have the assistant chiefs, delayed hiring like we talked about, to give them time to market position and so forth. But we want to try and get the police officers, firefighters hired as soon as the budget ends. I'm going to go to the summary sheet. So where that puts us today is operating surplus of $327,000. And then we've got the loan to the general water sewer fund going out and coming back in during the same year, so that's a wash. And it leaves us in a total change in fund balance around $265,000 that we would be spending, and puts us at 79 days of reserve, which the policy is 30 days, so we're, pretty good shape. Water. So on the last page in the water sewer side, for the capital items,
Does it look like that?
Yeah, the long sheet, the very last
Very
long
last
sheet.
page.
so the kind of pinkish, orangish color, we know for sure qualifies for the American Recovery Act funding. So we do not have to come up with money for those. The blue is the one I was saying earlier about the water sewer impact fee study. We can take out of the impact fee funds.
That's part of that 65
Right.
or 75, well, 60.
The green is what we're getting reimbursed from TxDOT for. And the dark red up at the top, we're still trying to determine whether the water meter replacements would be allowed under the American Recovery. But it is, and it would be another $159,000 covered from that.
What's the max
Yeah.
we can get from, feds?
For
3.2,
3.3.
yeah, it went up a little bit, it was originally 2.9, but recently we got updated numbers, so.
You gonna be able to get all that dry?
We actually have a little bit longer too. So I think we have until 2024 now. So, this will be a good chunk of it right now. But then we'll have some other projects as we move forward that we can do in the next couple of years to cover up the rest.
So who are we waiting on to answer that question?
We're
The red.
the red.
So basically, we just have to go through the criteria of what the grant allows and those guys. And so basically, we approved a recent meeting to go ahead and those funds, so we get our first allocation. And then we'll have to start filing and reporting on. So even if we were to go so far as spend it in the budget and then find out it qualifies. But so there's a criteria that we have to go through, and there's, different guidelines. We think that this one may qualify because of the upgrade system, with those meters, to the AMI system, as we discussed at the workshop. But some of that language is grant guidelines is difficult.
Well, so I guess my question is, so who answers that?
Well, sometimes it's trial and error, as we found some of our other grants we've seen where, we attempt to be reimbursed for some of those things that are maybe on the side where we're not totally sure. Then they ask serious questions, get more information, and usually it goes through some of those, but, I'm still attending training on some of those guidelines too, because it's very.
So we actually have it budgeted to spend, but we will apply for it. And then we'll either get it, and if we get it, then that's great. If we don't, we've already got it budgeted to cover. So you want to go back to the summary on the water sewer? So we're, again, still in an operating deficit on the water sewer side. And that change is a little higher than what it was at our last meeting. And the reason for that was some debt service was in the wrong fund. And that is the Austin Boulevard water and sewer stuff over there going into the Google site and so forth. So that was done as a revenue bond. We did that, if you remember, under the bond validation deal with the Rocket legal things, which I won't get into because we are in open session. But what was originally going to happen before we went that route was IDC was just going to pay to put in that infrastructure. bond validation gave us a legal leg up, so we went that direction. So we may want to ask IDC if they will pay the debt service for that infrastructure, because it is strictly for the industrial part. And that's what I was talking to you about the other day. And that would reduce our operating deficit by about $120,000, right? So that put us down to about 200,000, and then obviously that would increase our days of fund balance as well. So that would help us step out another year or two before we figure out who was buying water, Compass is buying water, and so forth. Total right now, without doing that, we got $556,000 coming out of fund balance. Because of some of those items that are not covered by the American Recovery Act. But even at that, we're still at 60 days. And knowing that we're going to have, again, more American Recovery Act capital for the next couple of years. So really, the only one I'm really worried about is the operating deficit on the water sewer. And I hate to bring it up, just because I hate to bring it up, but at some point we may have to look at a water and sewer utility rate study again.
Yep.
We haven't done one in several years. And I don't know that we would possibly be able to do anything on the sewer side because we're already so high. But the water side, we're not really that high. So I'm not proposing that in this budget, but that's something we need thinking about, in the coming year or two.
So how do other cities manage that to where they're not in such a big deficit?
They don't pay for Cedar Hills infrastructure. We are looking, the IDC is looking at a study to do some sewer plans out towards the east. We're looking at a big, major plan that would go all the way over to I-45 and would potentially encompass a partnership with Ferris, Palmer, and Waxahachie, maybe even Garrett, to provide sewer out in that whole area. But it would also allow us, and if that doesn't work, we could scoot it back closer in, still providing for just our citizens. So what that would do, I don't know that it would reduce the sewer rate yet, because we hadn't done the study, but it potentially could reduce the sewer rate. It could also potentially increase it. But if we were able to still have a minimum amount of flow that we have to send to the TRA for that existing sewer treatment plant. So we're still going to be saddled for that. But if we could take a large amount of the sewer that we're sending down there now to a different sewer plant, that may help us to reduce that cost. And worst case,
We're paying ourselves.
we're paying ourselves, as opposed to them. Long term, that would give us the ability to bring in more.
That's more like a 50-year thing, 20 year?
10, 20 years.
20.
And again, it depends on whether it's something that we're partnering with those other cities on, or if it's something that they're not interested in, we're doing internally ourselves. Probably speeds up if it's something we're doing internally. What else? Ben, do you want to talk about the gas monitor?
Yes, Meredith, we did speak with Atlas on, potentially buying us some gas monitors or helping us pay for that. They do have funds available. They don't know that exact cost yet. Their budget starts over September 1. And, they don't know year to year exactly what those funds are going to be, how much additional funds they're gonna have, but they do have us on the list. My understanding is we're top on that list. I don't know the dollar amount yet, so budget for it, and then if we are able to get those funds, then we can utilize that somewhere else. Again, I just don't know what that dollar amount is gonna be.
Or even just a matching, you know, that's,
Sure.
again, that partnership, any amount that we can help.
So,
get.
appreciate that idea, but certainly seems like it's gonna, at this point, certainly seems like it's gonna pay off.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for reaching out.
We did talk to IDC briefly about the basketball courts too, so they're gonna be looking at that in the coming year. Obviously, we're gonna have savings on the roof at the Live Oak Center, so let's plan on that, take that and cover the, overrun on the Austin Boulevard project, because that'll more than cover that change order.
Those basketball courts, should we have that in this budget, IDC?
No, IDC would do it as an expense, and council will approve it when we get ready to do it.
Give us your checkbook.
Right, I know you're wrong, but I'd be recommending take $200,000 out of IDC, but.
Like 3 times that.
No.
1.5 times.
Oh,
Willie, I
Okay, let me see what we have.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Speaking of, yeah, speaking.
Chief Wolf, Chief Blanton, I have a question. If you hire an officer, let's say in October, how soon are they eligible for a merit increase?
That's gotta be in the position for,
Fire system.
Is that city standard or state?
that's pretty,
I know it's pretty usual, but I don't know if that was something.
yeah, I don't know what civil service. They're different than that, you know. I know that's pretty standard across the board, using that 9 months of the year.
Well, 6 months we do an evaluation on them, then they're eligible for a increase after
These guys.
Okay, because I was thinking if 6 months would be kind of a good recruiting incentive.
So 18 months?
Well, if we hire them at 6 months, we do a 6-month eval, then they're 1-year hire plan, when they be eligible, but most of our raises are done every year.
Potentially, Mayor, like you're saying, if you hired him 6 months into the budget, it would be 18 months.
Yes.
Because they would get that.
Right. So that can be done to kind of make that an incentive? If we offer a way to kind of reduce that time for a new, let's say you have someone at 6 months and they're exceptional or whatever you deem necessary?
I think it'd have to be heavily marketed, because right now, we don't market anything like that. I mean, I have a lateral entry program, with a sign-on bonus. If they have X amount of years of experience, I can bring them in, up to the 4th step of the step plan, based on their experience. So it's
The bottom line is.
stepped up. If you got 2 years experience, I can bring you in, and on the second step. If you got 4 years experience, I can bring you in the 3rd step. If you got 6 years experience, I can bring you in the 4th step. For the officer position. So, I think it's a win if we can do that, if there's a way to do that. But again, I think it'd have to be marketed and added to, beyond the lateral entry program, just would be eligible for.
2027.
I'm not sure what that looks like fiscally, what's the impact on budget there.
Okay, I just know with development increasing, I think that's a curve to kind of be ahead of, just kind of brainstorm.
My goal is to have a pretty deep pool of candidates, hopefully a deep pool of candidates by October 1, so we can have their backgrounds being finished up. And October 1, as it pans out, like I'm hoping it's going to pan out, I can start giving conditionals leading up to that. But just because, if I don't hire somebody who's certified to do a lateral program, even if I hire somebody October 1, and I gotta send them to the academy to become an academy partner, we're looking at 6 months in the academy, 6 months of field training, so they're actually not much value for them.
Is that the same with you, Chief?
15
Same thing?
Yeah, well, we're hiring only certified. I'm sending them to the academy, all of ours is, the same circumstances, the period of time. We're still having enough candidates coming out of the fire academies to be able to still hire some. So we haven't run into that.
How does a fireman get certified?
I'm sorry.
How does a fireman get certified?
They go through a fire academy, and they go through a college, or there's independent standalone academies.
Their own expense, I guess?
Yes, sir. And, generally, last semester, so it's generally a semester, and then they go EMT or paramedic.
So what is DeSoto's? Do they not have their own
They do have their own school, yes, sir.
So, I mean, is that like Navarro?
Yes, sir. They're very similar, just the difference is Navarro College, you're gonna get actual college credit, hours for going through there. So that can go towards their degree to, a degree in fire science.
And you have to have a degree.
Well, to promote up, and you're gonna, to promote up through the ranks, eventually, yes, you're gonna have to have some portion, or if not a degree in full. So it helps them obtain that as well as their full.
So how big of a, how many numbers, how big does the department have to have their own academy?
So we're certified through the Texas Commission on Fire Protection to be a training facility. And we do small classes. So in essence, we could hold our own fire academy.
So what would the benefits be?
Well,
You could choose your own guy.
yeah, we could. The problem is we don't have a burn facility to go out and do line burns and some of the other.
His house?
So, and then some of the, just all the training props and, equipment that goes along with that, with that training facility to be able to provide that experience to the.
We've looked at in previous years, trying to do something jointly with some of the other cities. Just never has panned out.
So Waxahachie doesn't have one, or Midlothian don't have one?
Midlothian has they just completed one last year, at least was, they completed a burn facility. They just completed it, and of course, DeSoto obviously have their own academy, they have one as well.
They still don't run their own academy. They do their own in-house. Like we do a lot of in-house training on our own. Right. But police is a little different. You have to get a license from TCOL, our governing body, that says that you can do an academy. And they only hand out so many of those licenses. But there are people around here that are petitioning, trying to create a local or regionalized academy.
Where's the closest police right now?
We send ours to Cobb in
Arlington.
Like Navarro, they run a full-time academy, and they run a part-time. Most of the guys that are going through full-time academies are hired by an agency, they're being sponsored, and the city's paying for it. The part-time people, you're looking at a year before they're even viable as a candidate in the pool, unless you pull them out of that and send them to another academy, where they're gonna get spun up and ran through that 6-month training. So there's some dynamics there with going through Navarro or Collin County, Bill, unless you go with Dallas SO, and you go with, Tarrant County College has a full-time, part-time academy.
Problem doing it in-house, we just don't have enough to make it worthwhile to do it.
Well, staffing that with your instructor cadre, being able to pull people out of their regular job assignments to do the training, that's cumbersome. You would almost have to have a dedicated training staff, did nothing with that.
Yeah, so I guess at what point, this is for the future, at what point, how many officers or how many fire protectors you have to have that makes it economical to fund your own, or to, I mean.
Well, I think it's different between the training facility, training academy. The training academy, it would have to be a large number, because how many people go through the academy when they go through?
I mean, if we were just to hire 1 or 2 people at a time, it'd be very difficult just to run.
Right.
2 people, you have to run 15, 20 people at a time minimum to make it worth the effort.
Okay.
And to me, that becomes cost prohibitive unless you can do an MOU or an ILA with other agencies or other departments.
Right.
In-house training is not as big a deal, to be able to host that, but even for us to be able to report those hours for our agency or other agencies, our agency is not a big deal, but if you're gonna report for other agencies, you have to have that license.
So how do we continue to work in that regional to partnership with Waxahachie, Midlothian, Ennis, say?
The SO is doing the research right now, to try and develop a regionalized police academy that they would run at least twice a year, pulling from instructors from all of those agencies that you talked about, plus the SO. One of the things you're gonna have with that is, though, you're gonna have an internal competitiveness with those other agencies on, unless you get those people hired ahead of time, you get them on your books, if you're just hosting it for people to pay their own way through, now you're competing with all those other agencies in that pool to try and hire them.
Sure, but if you're also then saying right now, if you're sending them to Arlington, you can say, we can send you locally, because are we funding that somehow? Or they?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're on our salary and we pay for them to go to the academy, and it costs me $1,400 to put them through a 6-month academy. Yeah, that's not very.
Yeah, so, yeah, I know it wouldn't be high numbers, but at least we have that regional pool, and we can become, we being Ellis County, whomever, I mean, we're not having to go out pirate urban or whatever, anyway, but, and I know that's not this discussion, but, golly jeepers, I know y'all are always hurting for people, and so somehow we need to, and I'm sure they're hurting for people too.
Well, and we advertise, at least my department does, we advertise on a national level. Police1.com, SDR, all of the biggest places, because the way we look at it is, we've kind of exhausted our gene pool around here. I mean, without being crass, you're only gonna pull so many people from this region.
Put it on Facebook. All those Facebook Live, I'm sure there's some officers there that, I'm just, you know what I'm talking about. The ones that we all
Chief, I
laugh
just want to
about.
let you know that
We get back
Ben
to budget.
Griswold and I are both certified, so.
Yes, we have a place to be certified to take those people. Yeah, their own transportation, they take them. No.
So, where we're at is to be able to institute the step plan, or the market adjustments in October, and hire all of the officers, not the assistants, in October, which we wouldn't be able to do just from the numbers. Yeah, standpoint. But we would want to budget it that way because we don't know how many. That would be, both of those together, $215,000. That would take us down from 79 days of reserves to 73 days of reserves, which is still more than twice our costs.
That's different than the, so that's just new hires.
Right. New hires beginning in October instead of new hires beginning mid-year.
In April.
And the market adjustment for everybody. Market adjustment will be across the board for existing employees and new employees.
215.
Right, 215, 223, I'm sorry, 223. So total for both of those.
So another 110,000 for new hires, right? And then that 111 that we're gonna do to get us up competitive.
Right.
Okay. And then come April, 3% on top.
Right.
And that 111 is about 3% for our new hires and but they wouldn't qualify in April because it hasn't been a year or hasn't been that.
If they actually started in October or November, then they would qualify.
Okay, so based on our discussion, they can qualify.
Well, not for, I'm trying to remember exactly how the policy's written, but tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's 6 months for general employees, 1 year for public safety. So public safety wouldn't, new employees who start
In October.
they would get the 3%, what we're gonna call it a market adjustment.
They would get higher, 3% higher.
Or if they can't get that 3% in April, they have to wait until their higher date, which would be October, or at the earliest, or whatever we do next year, fiscal year. Now, while y'all were trying to crunch those numbers, we were trying to have that discussion. Is there any way that we could change that, make it more a policy change, to make that more amendable, so they're not having to wait that 18 months or that year?
So I would caution that, and I think the reason that you see that policy, and it's pretty standard in the local government world, is because of the investment that it costs to bring a police officer and a firefighter on board, and they want to make sure that they make it to that first. So, also, the way that they do their training programs and their evaluation criteria, it's an ongoing, especially within the, a lateral transfer is a little different because they're coming in, they're usually certified, they've had years of experience. When we bring in a rookie, that first year is their probationary. And I think that that's important. And that gives them the ability then, if there is an issue, discipline or otherwise, they have the ability to make whatever corrective changes that they need to make within that year. Now, I will tell you though, the way that the market is going, you may see local governments start changing that mindset, if that's something that would keep people around. I don't know, but it's been that way for some time. Sure. A year for public safety is about the same.
I think we ought to be guided by our police chief, the fire chief, because if they're the one that's having to deal with this problem, and let them recommend what they they feel best rather than, jumping out here, sort of getting in their business. They're the pros of this thing.
We're trying to follow what our discussion was over here while they were trying to crunch
No,
numbers.
and I think, at least for me, I'm appreciative that we had those conversations, that you're asking those questions, because that shows progressive mindset. But I think at the end of the day, Jonathan's, to his point, if I hire a green kid, and I put him through the academy, and all I got is a 6-month benchmark on his academy time, he comes out and I put him in 6 months of field training, I get a 6-month snapshot of his performance, and then we're gonna throw a merit on top of that, or we're gonna give it to him sooner. I mean, conceivably, if I hire one in October, 6 months later, I give him a raise for graduating the academy, but I still don't know how he's gonna perform in the field.
Sorry,
And he's off of city probation in that 6-month period. But we extend that an additional 6 months because we want to see what they're gonna look like when they're actually in the field doing the job. So they're not only getting, evaluated in their field training program, but our department, we do quarterly evaluations on performance. Everybody in the police department, we were doing it monthly, and that was a little company, so we pushed it out to quarterly. But that gives us a really good snapshot of performance, which involves body cam reviews, in-car camera reviews, report writing reviews, any performance-based issues, disciplinary actions. That gives us that snapshot to be able to make those decisions, if they need to be on a performance improvement plan, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of agencies that do that, but there are more agencies that don't do that than do. So, I think we have a good model, and I think it works for us. I'm very appreciative that we're having those questions asked of us, that we actually have an opportunity to have some dialogue. But I think what we're doing right now is that, at least for
they get hired in, we do monthly evaluations on new hires, so we give them that feedback every month. Sit down, their entire shift sits down and evaluates them, and lets them know what their performance is, and what they need to work on between then and the next evaluation. So it's no surprise to them. And then, in addition to that, they have a probationary handbook they have to complete. That's divided out over a year period. And again, there's basically a final exam amongst all these other tasks they have to do. So that allows us that opportunity to evaluate them monthly, evaluations along with that probationary handbook, completing it, plus the final exam, if you will, at the end of the year. So it gives us different avenues to be able to evaluate that person and make sure that this is somebody we want to hold on to, that is going to make a career out of it, or somebody we need to retrain or terminate or whatever.
So if you could, and I think that's probably a valuable report for us to see periodically, or at the end of the year, is a retention rate of what you see in your, and of course, that exit interview on, so if they're not, was that our termination, they went to a higher paying job, what it was, if we're at a 98% retention rate consistently, and both of you are satisfied with who that is that's being retained, I think that's a valuable report to kind of hear about. Because, I think each time we always hear that you got 1 spot available or 3 spots available, we're like, well, is it something that we can change to retain them, or is that good flushing from y'all, getting them out of here? That type of thing.
So most of my turnover is not, has been disciplinary related. And it's not anything that you would have been able to glean from okay. Most of these guys are making it through that training block, most of them were getting, I have most of the kids that I've hired since I've been here. I've lost 2, 3 here or there, either went to other jobs, got out of law enforcement because they figured it wasn't due, or they took a higher paying job someplace. But our turnover with regards to that has been fairly minimal. Most of what I've had has been disciplinary related.
Well, and those are the headaches too, so you don't
don't want those, and, you know, it's just, with that turnover, makes it harder. Can we attract the new?
Sure. Yeah, rehire.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah,
been
I mean, the funds that you have to expend to train them,
you know, and how can we, $800.
well, there's a heck of a lot more money that's sunk into each.
Yeah,
I mean, it cost me $35,000 for an employee,
Equipment
so.
alone for us, most of the time. I think what y'all are doing in the conversations that we've had, just from my perspective, they've been beneficial for the budget process. I think we're doing everything we can, and by making these market adjustments, starts to pay, it keeps us more competitive. And I appreciate the fact that those discussions were had, that was looked at, by city administration for us. I think it's gonna give us a little bit of a leg up. Now it's just our job to go out and make sure that it gets marketed correctly, and we get it out in front of people, and we're pulling people in, and we've modified our hiring process, the way that we do it to streamline it, make it a little bit more efficient. We're trying that out for the first time. We'll see what kind of success we have with it. Breaking it up into smaller test dates, instead of hoping to have a bunch of people show up on one date, trying to process 50, 60, 70 people.
Yeah, I was just under the same impression that you were, that I assumed that, you know, the problems that we were having, that we weren't competitive or didn't have enough incentives. That's kind of what I was kind of spinning my wheels on, try to see if we can come up with some good ideas. But it sounds like you have it under control. So.
I think we're in a good place. I think the biggest thing is being able to be competitive salary-wise, because people are looking at that starting move.
Sure.
I've actually had people pull out my process when we had dates on the same dates, and I'm gonna go down the road and test with this agency because they start out $5,000 more, they start out $3,000 more. Well, if I can close the gap on that, and I can show them the kind of training program we have, which is what I hear from my staff is, our training is awesome in comparison to other places that I've worked, kids that I've stolen from other agencies. We didn't get this kind of training. We don't get this stuff. You guys are all about making us better and giving us the training that we need, and that's kind of a feather in our cap, at least in my eyes. So we push the training rate, and we're supported. We have a very robust training budget. Not to hijack the meeting, but I mean, we have a robust training budget, and that's something that our kids look at. So I think we're doing a lot of things right with this conversation on pay. We're going to be more competitive, and I'm anxious to see how that fares, you know, come October.
Yeah, you know, of course, all the other cities around us are having these same discussions.
They are.
And so they're gonna be doing the 3% or whatever,
Right.
so, you know, and
But
again,
at least we're not behind.
well, yeah, and as long as we're offering the weight rooms and the 6%, here we go. Yeah, no, you know, the other amenities and the leadership and anyway, again, I will put our administration above any other around here, and, you know, they're fools if they don't want to come here.
Yeah, I even, you know, they've been, you know, working for a while on me to try to allow tattoos, because a lot of the military guys coming out of the military want to go in police work. I finally told him, yeah, go ahead and hire them with a tattoo. If it becomes a problem, we may have to address it later. You know, if that's a roadblock, then take it out of the way.
On and on and on. Let's get on the budget.
So I think that's everything that we had left over from the last meeting. So, you know, if you all are comfortable with that, and going ahead and moving the police hires in October and the adjustments in October. And I think that's all I have, unless you all have other questions.
So,
And asking IDC to cover that.
yeah. 2.5 times.
Always something, every meeting, we gotta cover somebody.
All right, so the Dove Lane, what was that again?
That's the, well, we already had the drainage project, in for Dove Lane, but this is a wastewater project that we want to go ahead and do it at the same time.
That's the one that we were,
It's the same area, yeah.
same area, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's covered by the recovery.
Okay.
We're good there.
Okay. So, kind of as a recap, with the way you're proposing it, all the number crunching that you just did, it really didn't change anything. You're looking for approval to say, yeah, let's try to back that into October, 3%, based on these recommendations
Trying to hire in October and do the
Step.
adjustments in October,
in April.
and adjust the steps in April.
Okay. And-
What did you say that you moved the reserves to?
If we do both of those, it goes from 79 days to 73 days.
Now, I saw a 90-day reserve on one of these funds. Was that sewer, or was that? What did-
see.
Can we do that for 30 days?
Yeah.
Spend the money, give me 31.
Spend that money.
So there's one that's listed 90 days.
Yeah.
That's fund balance, project reserve. That's EDC, that's EDC, I'm sorry. Project. Maybe it's not. Okay, and the net change is the same taxable dollar amount per 100,000, per hundred.
Same tax rate.
Same tax rate as what it was last year and the year before. I think, right?
Here, it's exact same rate, but as the houses go up in value, it still increases our revenue, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's
But
nothing to do.
it's still staying under the minimus rate and the voter approval rate at the same time. Because a lot of it is new improvements.
So what would that de minimis rate, since it's not listed on that second page?
On this sheet, the tax rate,
Yeah, but it doesn't say what it would have been.
column 4,
Yeah.
730403.
Oh, so scenario, the far right?
It's right here in the middle of the page.
the left of the yellow.
The rate,
Yeah, so,
right here?
so that scenario one,
Oh, okay, it's down
Oh.
here where it says total tax rate.
so the 1 cent. So three cents, basically, a little less than 3 cents.
Right.
Okay.
Go over those things again for me. I moved it green on this. Since I haven't been in the city that long.
On the rates.
On the rates, yeah, the
Just
minimum
wording.
rate.
So, the minimus rate is what the state allows cities of under 20 or 25,000 population to go up to, without having to have any voter approval or anything else.
Okay.
And that allows a city to increase their revenues by $500,000.
And that rate is,
And that rate is 73 cents.
okay. Next.
The voter approval rate is just a little bit higher than that. So if we went to 7354, then the voters could call an election and have that rate approved.
Okay.
And what we're actually proposing is the exact same current rate as we have today,
Which is,
the 730645.
okay. What do you call that rate? Current rate?
Proposed rate, current rate, they're the same.
Thank you, sir.
Then the no new tax rate would be what used to be the old, what do you call it, effective rate.
Yeah, okay, that's where I'm,
Right.
yeah. Which it actually goes down, I mean, it goes down on what we had the previous year.
Right, where you don't.
Honestly.
So if we did that 1 cent above, it's less than the 0.35 approval. So why do you have that on this sheet for comparison? What were you thinking? Why were you thinking along those lines? We had to pay for something that we're coming up short on?
No, I did that for y'all's purposes, so that y'all can look at it and understand what one's doing versus the other. For me, I say we go with the proposed rate, which is the current rate.
Yeah, absolutely, especially the value of the study
Right.
declining.
Right, but we did want y'all to at least see those other rates if you make a decision. So,
And it shows you the effect of the penny.
right,
Tax rate, so the penny is the 129,
yeah,
246, what a penny does, plus or minus.
Yeah, so and the new voter approval tax rate of 3.5, that new law, that was, you could go up to that, not have to do an election.
the election. Well, I think there's more complicated than that, because you still have to stay either under the minimus or the, whatever the.
So, yeah, you have to look at, so if you look at the top, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have to stay below, both the 3 and the 4. To know, so that, no election.
Triggering the election.
Trigger for any
You go up to
kind of
that, you're gonna have an election.
Maybe
recall.
Yeah, recall.
And if we weren't calculating the de minimis rate, we wouldn't have to look at the because we're allowed to calculate that and look at those numbers also.
And of course, we're gonna have people come and say, well, why don't you do the no new tax revenue rate, which lowers it down, and then that cuts out that 246,000 that we're using the budget. Because you gotta still keep all your current housing services intact.
You got raises in police force, and
For all these,
increasing costs, everything else.
I still think we could have a fire burn and, yeah.
Thinking out Novella someplace.
Thinking that might be counterproductive.
You got any hay that needs baling?
I do have to say, you know, with all that wheat and stuff that they've hauled in, they haven't cut that straw yet. Boy, that's prime fire right now. All right, council, any other questions?
I don't
Yeah.
have
All right, so anything else you want to add to this?
I want to make sure that y'all are good with us adding those two components in, the hiring, October, and set, or the adjustments.
Absolutely.
But we have not removed the budgetary item for the assistant chief.
No.
But that's gonna be till April,
Yeah, they're,
February, oh, I'm sorry,
they're still in there, they're still in February.
second half of the, okay,
Second quarter.
second quarter of the first year, okay. Okay. Did we miss anything else?
We're ready to look over it anyway. Miss anything? Okay. We will need, at some point, we probably need to do resolution, so we'll also intergovernmental funds and so forth, track that, but won't change the actual budget, so, pay for it. I think that's all. guys need anything else? Eat? I didn't say one.
Okay. I'm like, hey, you open the door, I didn't hear that.
I'd just like to say, I'm very appreciative of Warren and Cindy's work on the budget. And the process, it seems like it gets more streamlined every year, more efficient. There wasn't a lot of wasted effort. The new forms that we're using, the way that it was presented, and we've been allowed to do it, at least for me. It's one of the better processes we had in a while, and I'm very appreciative of that. It was efficient, it was good use of our time, and I know they put in a lot of work processing each department's request, the way that it's going, and I'm sitting here reading the documents, and the verbiage that's in there, and it's my verbiage, it's my text, my justification for my request, that, y'all are seeing what I'm asking for, and it's not cleaned up or changed, or whatever the case may be, and she's been both of them have been very supportive of the process and helping us through it. So I don't know how the fire guy feels about it, but it's been good.
I agree, it's been very good, and how, I was just telling Cindy a moment ago, how her and Gloria do their job, I don't know, she's trying to get COVID reimbursement and all these grant funding, winter storm reimbursements, and vaccine reimbursements, I don't know. So, I know she emails me a lot, late early in the morning at times. Yeah, she'll email late at night, and like, get off, quit working, but she doesn't,
God said it's leadership.
I agree. She works her tail off, okay.
Okay. So, there's no action items on this. Is that correct, since we did that earlier? Okay. So. Let's go home. All right, so I'll entertain that motion. Thank you, Councilman Wilson.
Second.
Councilman Franklin, and the time is,